There we go. So, good evening, everyone. And this is the first of 7 workshops that will take us to the end of what has been an amazing journey with iMeditate. And I wanted to do something. I didn't just want to do kind of, oh, let's do a meditation, let's do this, let's that for the last 7 weeks. I wanted to end on um, something different. I want these 7 workshops to contain hopefully the essence of, for me, what this has all been about. Um, it's certainly not going to be packed with every technique we've used because we'd be doing like day-long workshops. Um, we're probably doing week-long workshops. Um, and not every idea, not everything we've discussed, but I'm going to look at kind of the principles that have been driving underneath it. Things that I think when we really understand them and begin to live from them can change the way we relate to ourselves, to other people, and the life we're living. And we're beginning tonight with something that sounds deceptively simple, also can be quite controversial because not everyone agrees with it. Not everyone agrees with it. But I actually hold it as one of my dearest, most treasured thoughts when I think of other people that come to me and they've got problems. And that is, you are not broken. You're not broken. So I've got to be clear about that. What I mean by that, I don't mean people aren't wounded. I don't mean people don't have difficult experiences that leave marks upon them. And I do not mean that there are no illnesses, traumas, and times when we need support, treatment, teaching, or help from somebody who knows how. Of course, there are. What I mean is that being hurt is not the same as being broken. Struggling, not having the patterns, the coping abilities to deal with certain situations that life throws at us isn't defective. Having patterns that no longer serve us does not mean that there's something fundamentally wrong with us. Needing support does not mean that the resources for change are entirely absent for you. Help at its best does not put humanity into somebody who had none. It helps them rediscover, organize, and use what life has already placed within them. We all have experiences. We all have so many different experiences we can draw upon. And sometimes it's just making that connection that actually what helped me in this one situation, although it might be a different situation, if I apply it here, can also help me here. So we're not broken. We're always learning. There's always something new to discover. And I get frustrated. I get people, I get frustrated with with it when people are like, "Oh, I'm broken. Oh, I'm damaged." I don't. Why instantly putting yourself in a non-split fixable mindset? What's that about? You know. It's the same with things like when people get labeled with stuff. Yes, there are ways that brains and bodies don't work the same as everyone else, and there are things that have been labeled that I don't think should be labeled. They're just personality. They're part of who you are. But we live in a world now where just your personality can be labeled as defective rather than it's just who you are. And you have some strengths and you have some weaknesses. And, you know, if we learn our strengths, then we can look at our weaknesses and go, okay, I'm not strong in that area. What can I do differently? What do I need to learn? Or, I'm no good at that. Who can I get to deal with that part of my life for me? You know? But I don't think we're broken. It's a very different starting point from the one that gets bandied around more and more and more. Because if you're broken, you have to go to somebody to be fixed. When we struggle, the question often arises, what's wrong with me? Well, why should there be something wrong with you? Feels like a question, but it really contains a verdict. It's assuming we've done about presupposition. The question, what's wrong with me, is a presupposition that something is wrong. And once the mind accepts that presupposition, that assumption, it begins, we were talking about this the other week, searching for the evidence. Why am I like this? Why can other people manage? Why do I keep doing this? Why can I not simply get over it? What's missing in me? We can do it with our health and our wellness. We keep going, oh, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? What needs fixing? What needs, rather than going, okay, I'm struggling at the moment with this. What do I need to do to get better? What do I need to do to move forward from this? We may spend years, and people spend years and fortunes trying to repair themselves because of this brokenness. Read books, attend courses, begin practices, diets, routines, and methods. We decide that perhaps this teacher, this system, or this new piece of understanding will finally provide the missing part. Some of these things are extremely helpful, extremely useful. Hopefully, over the last several years, we've all discovered that. And especially if we actually do them and put them into practice. And, I've spent a large part of life now looking at this stuff and sharing it and teaching and working with people. But there's a danger when every new method rests upon the belief that there's something fundamentally wrong or absent from you. Because then every attempt to change quietly reinforces the original method. I'm not yet enough. I do not yet contain what I need. I must become somebody else before I can begin to live. Why wait that long? Just live. And the search for change becomes another way of rejecting the person who is here. One of my great inspirations throughout life is Carl Rogers. And he understood something important about this. He recognized that genuine change often begins when we stop fighting ourselves long enough to encounter what is actually present. But when we indulge every pattern, not when we indulge every pattern, not when the starting point becomes understanding rather than condemnation. Because what we call a problem is very often something which began as an attempt to help. Anxiety may be a system trying to anticipate danger. I'll go back to that original anxiety workshop we did. Anxiety is a friend. It's there to let you know something needs attention. And the problem is, in the modern day world, we put that voice to one side and keep ignoring it, so it has to keep shouting louder, and then it has to get more dramatic on what it does for us to take note. Withdrawal may be a way of avoiding another hurt. And in the moment, it may help, and in the future, it may be a problem. But we're not broken. People pleasing may have developed as a way of preserving connection. Anger may be protection, a boundary which was ignored for too long. Procrastination can be avoiding failure, avoiding judgment or exposure. The strategy may now create suffering. It worked for us in a point in time. It got us out of a situation. It helped us get beyond something. But I've said this many times, our brains are lazy. And if there's a pattern that worked once, rather than interpreting, and we've been doing a bit in the meditations about seeing the moment from as it is now, rather than letting past experience interpret it by just, the lazy option, oh yeah, this is just like that time before. We don't want that. Um, you know, it can be a badly outdated program. It may be operating in circumstances where it's just no longer needed. But you're still not broken. It means that something intelligent learned a solution and never received the message that the situation's different. Milton Erickson, again, one of the people that has greatly inspired me. And, if I was to say off the back of all this, study anyone, learn from anyone. Carl Rogers, Milton Erickson, and Richard Bandler, although, well, he's not everyone's cup of tea. Erickson did not begin by asking how he could defeat the unconscious mind. He assumed that the unconscious was already trying to do something useful, even when the result was possibly painful or difficult. The question was not simply, how do we get rid of this? The more interesting question was, what is this trying to accomplish? And how might that same intention be fulfilled in a better way? And I love that. It's not woo-woo positive thinking. It's just going, okay, I'm attempting to improve this situation. Maybe it's not quite working. It doesn't mean you're broken. It just means that maybe this intention can be fulfilled, or this situation can be fulfilled in a better way. And that's kind of the spirit of tonight. We're not going to pretend that every difficulty is secretly wonderful, because that would just be ludicrous. And we're not going to put a positive label over suffering. We're going to consider the possibility that beneath many of the things we've all tried to fix in the past, there's a resource which has become hidden, misdirected, or forgotten. And perhaps the work isn't to create a new you, but to restore the communication with the parts of you which have been waiting for you to listen. So there is going to be a little bit of interaction tonight. You can either drop it in the chat, which is fine, or you can, if you want to speak on the microphone, feel free. But just dropping it in the chat, in fact, is fair enough. We're not after huge details or anything else. And if you don't want to respond out loud, or you don't want to put something in the chat, then you don't have to. But I'd like you to complete this sentence without trying to explain it, just naming it, whether it's anxiety, lack of confidence, maybe believe you're too sensitive, too emotional, too quiet, too much, or a habit or a fear, or whatever. One thing that over the past few years, or one thing that I've spent years trying to fix about myself is. One thing, yeah, that's it. One thing I have spent years trying to fix about myself is, and then just name it. Like I say, you can drop it in the chat, and that's fine, especially if I've opened the chat so I can see it. Doesn't have to be the biggest thing, doesn't have to be the deepest thing. It can be a niggly little thing. You go, oh, I've always keep doing this thing and I wish I didn't. But just something that you've kind of perceived as being wrong or broken. It's my fault. Yeah. Spent years trying to fix about myself is anxiety. Yeah. Don't know if Anne's got something there or. I'll move on, Anne. If you want to drop something in there, do feel free. So yeah, one thing. So we've got the idea of blame, self-blame, trying to fix anxiety. Thank you, first of all, for sharing those things. What strikes me whenever people answer a question like, that's the amount of effort. How do I word this? Well, yeah, whenever we answer a question like this, what stands out for me is the amount of effort we've invested in becoming acceptable to ourselves. And often the very things we've been fighting are parts of us which once had a really good reason to exist. I wonder what might happen if, instead of immediately asking ourselves to remove them, how do we get rid of this? How do I overcome this? How do I've had friends and heard people go, "Oh, I'm struggling with this at the moment. I really want to beat it out of me." Whoa. That's like saying I've got a toothache and I want to punch it out. It might be an emotional thing, but it's still a violent act towards ourselves. Um, so I wonder what might happen if instead of immediately asking how to remove it, how to get rid of it, how do I fix this because it's wrong, we became curious about it. Not in an indulgent kind of woe is me kind of way. Just curious, because curiosity creates a very different relationship from judgment. When we kind of go, I have anxiety, being sensitive. Thank you, Anne, for dropping that in there. You know, if we see that as being a fault, if we see that as being something we're doing wrong or part of our brokenness, we're judging it. We're judging ourselves. Judgment stands outside of an experience and declares what it is. This is wrong. This is anxiety. This is wrong because you're always wrong. It's always your fault. This is wrong because I'm always sensitive. That's what judgment does. It goes, that's wrong. Fix it. It's broken. It's not working. Curiosity moves towards it and asks, what has not yet been understood? Just so happens in my notes, the example I kind of pulled up was anxiety, but obviously, you know, let's look at anxiety as an example. It's uncomfortable. At times, it can be disabling. I'm not going to kind of romanticize it, but to become anxious, the mind has to be capable of several really remarkable things. To be anxious, our mind must imagine. It must imagine because we're anxious about something that's going to happen or might happen or a feeling. And so our minds imagine all these possible terrible outcomes and all these possibilities. Anxiety, in some ways, is the monster beneath the bed. We're imagining it. We're imagining possible scenarios that are then triggering our anxiety. If an anxiety, I mean, you can cross that into fear in the same way. Is, when Fee was struggling with heights, she would be imagining all these, oh, I'd get up somewhere high and the building will collapse, or oh, I'll fall off. And so amazingly, we have to not just imagine, but we have to experience anxiety, be able to imagine strongly enough that part of our mind and body thinks it's real to create the chemical releases within us to experience the physical sensations of anxiety. That is remarkable. We must be able to anticipate, to run past many scenarios, just to focus on what possibly. We've got to be able to recognize patterns, detect possible consequences, and produce enough physical energy to prepare for the action. Strip those away from the idea of anxiety. I've seen job descriptions which must be able to use their imagination, must be able to see possibilities, must be able to work with patterns and detect possible outcomes. That's what consequences are, aren't they? Possible outcomes. And must have the energy and the drive to be able to do this. I mean, that's a job description, or a really nice, I am an imaginative person, I am creative, I am good at problem solving, recognizing patterns, looking at possible outcomes. That's the kind of stuff you put in a CV to say, look how good I am. So if we get curious about anxiety, there are several remarkable skills there, all tied into it. And they're not useless. The difficulty is that in our minds they've become organized around threat or perceived threat. The imagination is being used to frighten rather than inspire. Pattern recognition is finding danger everywhere. Preparation has become exhaustion, because if we're anxious all the time, it is exhausting. The resources are present, but they're just being employed in a way which makes life smaller. Or let's think about somebody who's learned to remain quiet because speaking out once led to ridicule or rejection. At one point, silence kept them safe, helped them stay invisible. But now that silence may frustrate them. They may call it a weakness, but somewhere within the silence, there may also be sensitivity, observation, and a finely developed awareness of other people. Again, a bit of curiosity opens up what that silence, that being quiet, has within it. What resources are there? And again, the purpose is not to praise the limitation and leave it untouched. It's to stop confusing the strategy with our whole selves. A person is not anxious. I have never met a person who is anxious. I have met people who are very capable of producing anxiety. A person is not a failure. They're someone who's experienced events and organized meaning around them. And a person is not broken. They're living within patterns which may have become separated from the conditions which first created them. And if that was learnt, something else can be learnt. And I'm not going to go rose tinted and go just like that, because that's not the case. Sometimes it can be. Sometimes it can be a single line, a single statement, a single different way of looking at something that shifts it all. And when that happens, it's miraculous. It's a real blessing. But it's not necessarily always going to be instant, not always easy. But learning means movement remains possible. And we've looked at NLP in the past, and there's a central assumption within NLP that people possess the resources they need to change. The statement is sometimes presented a little maybe too simplistic. I need a drink. Simplistically, as though we should be able to produce any result just by clicking our fingers and discovering the correct internal state. I don't believe there's many people who can do that. You may need knowledge you do not yet possess. You may need another person. You may need practical support, medical care, money, opportunity, or time. The world matters, circumstance matter. They all influence. But even when outside help is needed, the capacities through which you receive and use that help remain with you. The ability to learn, to respond, to notice, to imagine, to trust, to question, to endure, to choose one next step. I stupidly went for that walk on the weekend. My knees are still telling me it was a bad idea. And there's that one bit that was like this. I got up there just by looking at the next step. And I was literally chanting to myself, just one next step, just one more step, one more step. These capacities may take time to access. They may not immediately arrive on demand. But they're not foreign objects that somebody shoves into you. Every meaningful change you have ever made has passed through something within you which was capable of participating in it. And none of us are as young as we used to be. But consider for a moment what we've already lived through. Not just the dramatic moments, Just all the ordinary days when no matter what was happening, you just carried on. All the things you once could not do and eventually learned to do. All the situations which maybe frightened you in the past, but now they've become familiar. And that doesn't necessarily mean they're easy, but they're familiar. They no longer frighten you. And all the times we've adapted when life just didn't go as we expected. And I don't think there's many people who can say it's gone as they expected. If if you call yourself weak, if you call yourself broken, not enough, not good enough, if you call yourself I'm too sensitive, if you call yourself in any way kind of weak or diminished, what do you call the part of you which has brought you to this moment through all of it? Because you're not weak. You're so much stronger than you ever imagined and can imagine. Perhaps it's not weakness, perhaps it's a strength which has become tired. Perhaps it's a courage which forgot its own name. I got a little bit passionate about that. I told you these were key points, so yeah. In a moment, I'm going to guide us through an experience, little hypnotic thing, reconnecting us with three resources: curiosity, courage, and peace. Because it takes curiosity to make a change, to wonder, if I just change one bit, what difference will that make? You know, maybe we've been stuck in a certain situation and we've started reaching out to different groups of people and doing different things. Well, there has to be a curiosity there. Oh, mate, how am I going to feel if I go and do this? What's it going to be like if I go and do this? It's courage. Because especially if it's stepping out of our usual patterns and molds, it's like stepping a little bit into the unknown. But then when we discover that by doing that, we can feel better in ourselves, then there's also a sense of peace there as well. And I'm not claiming these are the only resources you need, but there are three very useful doorways. Because curiosity allows us to approach experience without already knowing what it means. Courage allows us to move while uncertainty is still present. Like, what the hell am I doing? Um, but I'm going to do it anyway. And peace allows us to discover that our worth does not depend upon constantly striving, proving, protecting, or feeling that we need fixing. So during this process, I may invite you to allow an earlier experience to come to mind. It's not about recovering hidden memories. Memory is creative. The mind may remember something accurately, alter it, combine it with something else, or create a scene which is entirely symbolic. And by that, you will know by now, I'm not necessarily talking that you're going to find a video in your head. For some of us, it's just the way our thinking goes. We drop an idea in and we explore it. For other people, you get the full movie scene. I'm very jealous. I never have. But yeah, so it's not about that. It's not about hidden memories. So none of that matters tonight. We're not investigating our histories. We're allowing the unconscious mind to use memory and imagination as a way of making contact with a resource. It may be a real event, but it can equally be a completely made up event. Um, because we have to know what that quality is and that resource is to create a made up event that we associate with something. And we can learn through our imagination. Milton Erickson was paralyzed from polio at a young age, and he used his imagination alone to picture himself as he used to be when he could use his body. And over 6 months went from not being able to move to going canoeing by himself for several days down a river. So an imagined event is just as good as a real event. You may just simply feel something. It might just be a sense of a feeling or a thought. Whatever happens will be enough. For each of these three resources, we're also going to create a physical association. We've done anchors and stuff before. It's not like a magical switch. It's not something which will make every difficult feeling disappear in 2 seconds. It's simply a way of teaching the nervous system a route back towards an experience it already knows. And the more we do it, the more it becomes automatic, like driving, he says. Maybe that was the problem. So we're going to use the thumb of one hand. I don't know which hand is going to be the right hand for you to use for this. For curiosity, you'll gently touch the thumb to the first finger. So on either hand, that would be curiosity. For courage, be the thumb and the middle finger. And for peace, the thumb and the ring finger. And nobody else ever needs to know what those small movements mean. They are yours. So, are we ready to begin? Emojis, thumbs up. Are we ready to begin? Yay, that's what we want. Good, good. So, get yourself as comfortable as you can. Have a fidget, get comfortable. Let your hands rest just somewhere comfortable and easy. You basically want to be comfortable, nothing strained. And in fact, you may close your eyes now. And there's no need to make anything happen. You do not need to enter hypnosis in the correct way, because there is no correct way. Some people experience vivid imagery. Some people notice physical sensations. Some hear words and think about them. Some drift and return. And perhaps the most useful thing you can do is stop checking whether you're doing it properly, and just let the experience come in the way that it comes. So let's take a nice, comfortable breath in and let it go. You may notice the places where your body is supported. The chair beneath you, the bed beneath you, the floor beneath your feet. And you can allow the body to receive that support without having to earn it. The chair, the bed does not require you to be confident. The floor does not ask whether you have done enough today. Gravity does not wait for you to become a better person before holding you. For a little while, you can be supported simply because you are here. And as you listen to my voice, other sounds may continue around you. Sounds inside the room, sounds beyond the room. And nothing needs to be excluded. You do not need perfect silence in order to go inward. The unconscious mind has always been able to learn in the middle of life. And perhaps you can notice one breath, then another. Noticing that the breath changes and moves even when you do not consciously change it. No two breaths exactly the same. The body responding moment by moment. And somewhere beneath everything you've learned to think about yourself, the body still remembers how to respond, how to adjust, how to continue, how to return towards balance when given the conditions in which balance becomes possible. And so you may imagine now that you're, however you do that, standing somewhere at the beginning of a path. You don't have to see it clearly, just perhaps sense the ground. Maybe there's light or dark, or just simply a feeling of being somewhere slightly removed from ordinary time. The path does not lead backwards into the past in any literal sense. It leads towards experiences which remain available within you. Things you've known before, things which may have become covered by expectation, disappointment, or the need to adapt. And as you begin to move along this path, you may become aware of how many versions of you have walked within this one life. The person you were yesterday, the person you were 10 years ago, the person you were before certain things happened, the person you became in order to cope with them. Every version learned something. Every version carried something forward. And none of them has been completely lost. Ahead of you, the path reaches a place where the light changes. And as you move towards it, there may be a sense of approaching the first resource. Curiosity. Not the need to understand everything. The capacity to meet something before you have received or decided what it is. And perhaps the unconscious mind can allow an earlier moment of curiosity to form. A real memory, an imagined scene, or simply the feeling of being drawn towards something because it was interesting. Perhaps there is a younger version of you there, a child absorbed in looking at something, making something, exploring somewhere, listening, touching, asking. Not because it will be useful, not because it will impress anybody, because something in the world has caught their interest. And so notice the quality of that attention. Not strained, not trying to improve itself. It moves towards experience. The curious mind has not yet decided that it already knows. It's willing to be surprised. And so perhaps you remember the feeling of becoming so involved in something that time became less important. The natural trance of discovery. And whether this is a memory of imagination or memory, notice where curiosity seems to live within the body. Where do you notice that within you? And if you're not sure, where would you think you might? Be curious about where you might experience that curiosity now. Perhaps a sense of forward movement. Maybe it's the opening of the eyes, a lightness, an energy, a tingling. No need to decide. Let the body show you. And as that feeling becomes available, as you begin to notice that now, gently touch the thumb and first finger together. Not gripping, simply allow those 2 points to meet. Allow that small touch to become associated with this willingness to discover. The ability to say, I do not yet know what this means. There may be something here I've not noticed. I can become interested. Curiosity loosens the certainty of the problem. It creates an opening through which something new can enter. So just gently open those fingers and thumbs again, and then bring them back together. Touch the thumb and the first finger together once more, and allow the body to remember. And then let the fingers separate, and the feeling does not need to disappear. You are simply allowing the path to continue. As you move onwards, perhaps the surroundings begin to change, and ahead there is another place, a place connected with courage. And courage is often misunderstood. We imagine it belongs to people who are unafraid. But the absence of fear requires no courage. Courage exists precisely because something matters and uncertainty remains. And so allow the unconscious mind to find a moment when you moved forward despite uncertainty. It doesn't have to be heroic. Perhaps it was entering an unfamiliar room, trying something you could not yet do. Maybe you spoke when remaining silent would have been easier. Maybe you returned after disappointment, asked for something, said no, or began again. Now, the conscious mind may say that it was nothing. The conscious mind often fails to recognize courage after an event. So just allow the body to remember what it took. Perhaps you can sense an earlier version of yourself at the edge of that moment. Not certain, not fully prepared, and still something moved. That movement is important. Courage is not always a powerful feeling. Sometimes courage is simply the next step taken while part of you would rather turn back. So notice what made that step possible. Perhaps something mattered more than fear. Perhaps there was love, necessity, a refusal to remain where you were. Perhaps you did not know you were being courageous. You simply continued. And as that sense of that resource, that courage becomes clearer, wherever you're noticing that now, gently touch your thumb and middle finger together. Allow the touch to become connected with the part of you which can move without waiting for absolute certainty. That part which understands, I do not have to feel completely ready. I can be frightened and still choose. I have moved before. You're not forcing yourself forward. You are recognizing that moment is already part of your history. So open up the finger and thumb, and then touch the thumb and middle finger together once more. And allow courage to be known, not as something dramatic, but as something familiar. And so now let the fingers separate and allow the path to continue. There is one more place ahead, perhaps quieter than the others, a place connected with peace. Not the peace of having solved every problem, not the peace of controlling every feeling, a more ordinary peace, a moment in which nothing was being demanded of you. And your unconscious mind can allow such a moment to arise. Perhaps lying in bed as a child, sitting near water, being held, walking somewhere alone, looking through a window, hearing the rain, resting after a day's effort. Doesn't need to have been perfect. Perhaps there were still unfinished things. Perhaps the larger circumstances were more complicated, but somewhere within the experience, there was a moment of enoughness. Nothing to prove that moment, nothing to perform, no need to monitor how it appeared or how you appeared. And as you think of that now, allow yourself to enter that quality. A moment when existence did not need to be justified. Perhaps there's softness, space, warmth, stillness, or simply the absence of urgency. You may not feel deeply peaceful now. You do not need to manufacture it. Just let the mind remember that peace has existed within your experience before, even if it was just briefly. And anything which has been experienced before has left some trace of a pathway. Gently touch the thumb and your third ring finger together. And as they touch, allow that touch to become associated with the permission to stop pushing for a moment. The recognition, I am allowed to pause. I do not have to earn every breath. For this moment, nothing needs to be proved. Peace is not the reward you receive when you finally fix yourself. Peace is one of the conditions from which wise change becomes possible. Allow those fingers to separate and then touch the thumb and ring finger together once more, allowing your body to register the association. And then let the fingers separate. And perhaps you now find yourself in an open place where all three paths meet. Curiosity, courage, peace. These are not foreign states. They did not come from my voice. The words may have helped to guide attention, but everything you experience was produced through capacities within you. Curiosity, courage, and peace are yours. They always have been. You created the images, you made the associations, your body responded, your unconscious mind selected what was useful. And perhaps you can imagine some ordinary situation in the days ahead, a moment when an old pattern begins. Maybe the thought appears, what's wrong with me? Pause. And instead of immediately entering the question, something else becomes possible. Curiosity. Gently touching the thumb and the first finger together. What is happening here? What is this trying to do for me? What have I not yet understood? Or perhaps there's a moment when you know what needs to happen, but uncertainty is present. The thumb and the middle finger. Not to disappear fear, but for the memory of movement. Perhaps the mind becomes exhausted from trying to solve and manage everything. Bringing the thumb and ring finger together, a moment of permission. A breath in which nothing has to be proved. You may use one resource. You may use another. Sometimes curiosity leads, sometimes courage, and sometimes peace. And over time, the unconscious mind can become increasingly skilled at recognizing which resource belongs to which moment. And there may be other resources already beginning to make themselves known. Humor, patience, clarity, warmth, determination. But there is no need to collect them all. You're not building an inventory. You are remembering a truth. The resource is not always absent. Sometimes access is absent. And access can be relearned. Perhaps there was a time when you believed you'd lost yourself, and still some part of you noticed the loss. Some part longed to return. Some part recognized that the way you were living was not the whole of you. That part is itself a resource. There may be feelings within you which seem broken. There may be places which remain tender. But tenderness is not proof of defect. It is evidence that something mattered. And you do not need to become the person you were before life affected you. You can become someone who carries what has happened without being defined only by it. Curiosity to discover what is possible. Courage to move. Peace enough to listen. Allow those three resources to settle in their own way. Nothing needs to be held consciously. The conscious mind may forget the words. The body can remember the root. So gradually becoming aware of the room again. The surface beneath you, the sounds around you, the movement of your breathing. Perhaps move the fingers gently. Recognizing each hand as the same hand which carried these resources. And when you're ready, just allow your eyes to gently open, coming back in your own way. Take a few moments before we move on. Don't need to explain the experience, just notice what remains. Maybe one resource was easier to access, maybe one seemed more distant. Perhaps something unexpected came. Perhaps the mind created nothing very clear, but there was a change in feeling. There's no correct result. The question is not whether you performed the process well. The question is whether something within you responded. That's right. So before we finish for tonight, I invite you and I ask you, it's like a little bit of homework, but it's not difficult. In fact, you can find that it's easy. During the week, as the days go by, just notice if you're asking, what is wrong with me? How do I fix this? Before you try and answer the what is wrong with me, just touch the thumb and the first finger together and become curious. Change the question. Ask instead, what is happening in me and what is it trying to do? And once you've asked that, then ask what resource is already present, even if it's not being used in the best way. Perhaps anxiety contains imagination. Perhaps anger contains the capacity to protect. Perhaps hesitation contains care. Grief contains love. You're not required to like the pattern. You're looking beneath it. And then when you do that, choose whichever resource is needed: curiosity, courage, or peace. Just use that small physical touch you created tonight and take one action from that resource. It doesn't have to be a grand action, just one honest expression of it. This is resource before remedy. Before rushing to repair yourself because you are not broken, discover who within you is already available to meet that moment. Throughout life, we may need teachers, we may need friends, doctors, therapists, communities, practices. We may need people who can see what we cannot see and help us walk through places we've never traveled before. There is never weakness in that. We become ourselves through relationship as much through solitude. But good help does not make you dependent upon the belief that you're empty. It introduces you to your own capacity. It helps you discover that the courage you felt in another person's presence is still your courage. The peace you experienced whilst listening to someone's voice was still produced within your body. Insight which arose during a meditation was formed within your awareness. Something outside may have helped open the door, but you stepped through it. For years, we may have tried to fix ourselves. Perhaps we believed that sensitivity, fear, anger, anxiety, uncertainty, or need makes us less than whole. But what if the very things you have thought are not evidence of brokenness? What if they are parts of a living system which learned how to protect you and now needs help finding a different way? What if beneath the adaptation, the original resource remains? The anxiety may still contain an imagination. Withdrawal may still contain discernment. The anger may still contain the knowledge that you matter. And beneath all of it, there remains the awareness capable of noticing, learning, and choosing again. The work's not to become somebody with no wounds. It's to stop mistaking the wound for the whole person. I truly do believe you are not broken. Sometimes frightened, sometimes tired, sometimes caught in strategies which have outlived the moment that created them. But you are also curious, and you're definitely courageous. And somewhere within your experience, peace always remains possible. Not because iMeditate and all the things we've done tonight give you that, but because they were never mine to give. Those resources and many more are within you. And as I said before, they are yours. Hold on to that.